So welcome to my first interactive tutorial on Reason Explained. And it's interactive because you can download this Reason file from the link that's in the description. And I would encourage you guys to do that. Go over there, get that file, and then you can follow right along as we edit these vocals, and you can learn things in real time and actually do it yourself. So let's go ahead and begin. So first off, let's have a listen and see what our final product is going to sound like. Go ahead and unmute the vocal channels here.
I die just to be with you. I die know how I feel. I die just to be with you.
All right. So first things first is we're going to duplicate this vocal file, and then we're going to go ahead and work with it. So right click on it and select duplicate tracks and devices. And let's go ahead and mute the original now. And go up to that in the rack view. And we're going to delete everything out inside of it. And so click on the reverb. Scroll all the way down to the bottom. Hit shift and then hit delete. And enter for yes. And now our insert effects on the vocal channel are clean. So next, let's name this the Vox copy. And we are ready to start building our rack for the vocals. So real quick, before we do that, let's have a listen and see how it sounds without anything on it.
I die just to be with you. I die.
So you can see it's a lot pitchier. There's some level issues, things like that. So we're going to go ahead and get a lot of that out of it. So inside the insert section of the Vox copy channel, right click and select utilities, and we're going to load a line mixer 6x2. Next, we're going to right click on the mixer and load a Neptune pitch adjuster in the studio effects, and hold down shift when you load that so it does not auto route. Tab around to the back, and let's go ahead and wire it up. So from the insert effects to device of the audio track to audio in of the Neptune, audio out to channel 1, and voice synth out also to channel 2. And then last, we're going to disconnect the right channel out of the mixer because we want our vocals to be in mono. Tab back around, and now we are ready to go ahead and start making the auto-tune section of this. So what we want to do is identify the scale first. If you have not used Neptune before, there's a channel or a video on my channel on the Neptune overview, and you can watch that real quick, and that'll give you a quick idea of how the device is laid out. So we're going to follow the signal path as the sound moves through the instrument, and that's how we'll kind of tweak things. So we're going to leave the initial section alone as far as low frequency, wide vibrato, and we're going to go into the scale section. So the way that I usually do the scale section is I would leave it in chromatic mode, hit play, and then watch the green light in here move around, and that'll tell me what notes that it's in. But in this case, I know what it is, so I'm going to go ahead and just go and draw it in. And now that we've got that, our next step is to move on to the pitch adjust section, and that's where we have the correction speed and preserve expression. So with the vocals, they're not the strongest performance, so we're going to use a little bit more correction than we'd probably like to, but it'll still clean it up nice and it won't sound too fake. So move the correction speed to about 82, and then preserve expression, we'll put that up to about 48-50%, somewhere in there. And correction speed is how hard and how fast we're going to correct that note, and the preserve expression will bring that original nuances from the dry track and try and keep some of those as it's corrected. Next, following the lineup, we'll leave the transpose section on and move to formant. And what we're going to do, the formant is like throat length. So the longer the throat, the higher pitch the vocal, the shorter the throat, the lower pitch the vocal. And I'm going to shift the formant up to about a value of 2. If you hold down shift and rotate the knob clockwise, you can dial in a more specific value. And what that does is it makes the vocal sound a little bit more just higher, kind of gives more like a kiddish feel, but not too much. So here's what they sound like now.
die just to be with you. I die, know how I feel.
So you can hear how everything is very clean as far as the pitch adjust goes now. So next, last I adjust the vibrato. And what I want to do there, the vibrato is like a wave in the vocal, kind of like a tremolo, but not a tremolo. And that allows the vocal just to sound a little bit more polished. So I put the rate at about 72 and the mod wheel up at about 12, and that's kind of like the amount. So now on the sustains, you'll hear a little bit of wave in the sound.
I die just to be with you.
And you can hear it really accented if you want to see what it does. So
Die just to be with you. I die, know how I feel.
So we just want a little bit in there. We don't want a ton. So, all right. So we've got things kind of adjusted pitch-wise. We're in the scale. It's sitting nicely. So now we can go ahead and start kind of refining the sound. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to compress and filter the vocals to kind of accent the high end. And we're going to do that with a pulverizer. So right-click on the Neptune, Creative Effects, Pulverizer. And first thing what we're going to do is set up some compression. So I'm going to go ahead and just select these real quick and right click on them and set loop to selection, so we don't have to keep setting our cursors all the time. I'm also going to change the snap to 16th notes just so we can dial in on it. And now what I'll do is I'll hit play and you'll hear the squash, and we'll move the compressor and you'll see what it does to it.
I die just to be with you. I die, know how I feel.
And so what we're doing is it basically is going to compress the louder parts of the vocals, but any quieter parts, it's going to bring those up as well. And they're going to pretty much make a more even keel for the vocals. I'm going to leave the dirt section alone because I don't want to boost or Joe Dirt up the vocals at all. Next, I'm going to go to the filter section, and we're going to load a high pass filter on the vocals. And what a high pass filter does is it allows the high frequencies to pass, and by doing that, it filters out the low end. So have a listen, and we'll modulate the frequency knob, and you'll hear exactly what I'm talking about.
I die just to be with you. I die, know how I feel.
All right, so we've got that that high frequency kind of accented now, and the peak knob is basically the resonance knob, so it kind of allows that frequency knob, or that frequency area to shimmer a little bit. So we'll adjust that just a little bit and see what we like.
I die just to be with you.
You can hear how it adds just a very subtle ring to it, so we're going to leave it at about 1 o'clock or so, 54%. All right, so last we're going to adjust the dry wet. We want to bring back some of that low end. We don't want to keep it so high like that. So as we do that, let's go ahead and bring some of the music back in too.
I die just to be with you. I die.
And that's what's cool about the pulverizer, is that it does the parallel effects at the same time. So you have the dry and the wet, and you can mix those together. So we've accented the highs, and then we've brought in some of the original as well, so we get this kind of mixture of both. So now, since we brought some of that low end back in, we're going to go ahead and start carving out the EQ and getting that squared away. So right click on the pulverizer, Studio Effects, M-Class Equalizer, and now we're going to go ahead and start EQing. So first things first is we're going to adjust the low shelf, and click the low shelf button there, and bring your frequency knob. You can go ahead and leave it at about 12 o'clock right now. Bring the gain down all the way to as far left as it will go. And you'll notice that it puts a little hump here in the vocals, or in the EQ section. So the Q value is what's going to take that away. And what we want to do is we want to make that shelf flat and then a drop off. And so now we'll move our frequency knob to the left, and we're going to have it roll off right around the 156 or so. So even though the frequency says 47 hertz, if you look where we start to drop off, we're dropping off at about 156 or so. The reason that we're doing that is because your kick, sub basses, and bass and all that stuff is going to sit in here. So we don't need the vocals to compete with that. We want to have the vocals have their own frequency spectrum as well as all the other instruments, and that's what's going to make things sound so clean. So next, we're going to go to our parametric 1, and we're going to go ahead and adjust some of the, we're going to boost a little bit in the mid-range section. So over by about 1.2 kilohertz, we're going to go ahead and boost that a little bit. So holding down shift, we can really dial in what we want to. And we'll do it about 1.2 there. Boost the gain ever so slightly to about 2.5 decibels. And then narrow your Q. So it's just a little bump. So it's a small accent there. We're not doing any drastic EQ effects. You may or may not know the difference, hear the difference, but it's just to kind of accent some things and cut some things. So we're going to come back to parametric 2 in a little bit because we're going to actually cut something here because we're going to put another part of the vocals right in there. But for now, we're going to leave it like this. Now let's right click on the equalizer because we want to do one more EQ. And Studio Effects, M-Class Equalizer, and Parametric 1 again. And what we're going to do is boost in the 5 kilohertz range. And what that's going to do is bring up the presence of the vocals. So go ahead and turn the knob to 5 kilohertz. Hold down Shift to really get as close to 5 kilohertz as we can. And again, boost by about 2.5 decibels or so. And narrow your Q, so we're just sitting right around that range. Okay, so let's have a listen here. You may or may not be able to tell the difference, hear the difference, but let's solo the vocals.
I die just to be with you. I die.
You can hear it a little bit on the first EQ as we bring some of that low shelf out. So now that we've got our EQ kind of set up, let's go ahead and add a compressor real quick. So we're just going to lightly compress things, and that's going to, again, just make everything sound consistent as it moves through. So right-click on that equalizer, Studio Effects, and M-Class Compressor, and we'll leave the gain and output gains alone. We'll leave the threshold at 12 o'clock, and we're just going to play and hear what it sounds like right now.
I die just to be with you. I die.
So we want the compression to be kind of weak. We don't want it to be over the top to where it's pumping. If we turn the compression on and we put the threshold down, you can see how it compresses a lot more, and things become they sound really weird. It messes with your ears. So threshold at about 12 o'clock or so. What that means is that the threshold is at minus 17.5 decibels. So as the vocals cross over that decibel value, that's when the compressor begins. So since we're sitting in a basic, we'll just say 4:1 or 3.39 to 1, that means for every 3 decibels over this threshold value that the vocals go, it's going to compress it by 1 decibel. That's the secret to compression, basically, is how far over the threshold you go. Last, we have our attack and release, and the only thing with that is the attack is how quick the compression reacts, or how quick it turns on, and the release is how long it's going to hold that compression and then let go. So now that we've got just some real subtle compression on there, let's go ahead and adjust some more of the high end. So right-click on the compressor, Studio Effects, and we're going to do a stereo imager. So now what we're going to do with this is we're going to solo the high band, and we're going to bring some of those highs out and then filter some more frequencies out and really get the vocals to sit in. So again, here we go.
I die.
And as we sweep over this X over frequency, you'll see that it's kind of like a high or low pass filter, but it's really just going to cross out those frequencies. So it's almost like a real specific notch. And you'll hear that right now.
Just to be with you, I die. Know how I feel, I die.
And so what I've done is I've X over frequency, put the X over frequency at about 470 hertz, which you'll notice sits about right in here. And the reason I did that is because now we have a notch here with the X over frequency. We've soloed the high end. We've also are going to put a notch in here in a minute. And so we've basically accented separate parts of the vocal track to really make them stand out, and then cut out other areas to allow the other instruments to play as well. So last, let's put a maximizer on this, and let's get things kind of boosted a little bit. So Studio Effects, right click on the stereo imager, Studio Effects, and M-Class Maximizer. And we'll boost the gain just a little bit by about 2 decibels. And put the 4 millisecond look ahead, which means the limiter is, it's kind of like a compressor. It's not quite, but it's going to basically have a little bit of a slow attack. So it allows that first part of the initial note to go through, and then it's going to react. And you'll see it right here. And then last, we'll turn the soft clip on, which means the more that I turn the amount of the soft clip on, it will allow some of this to get into the red here. And it's okay if it's very slight. That's kind of what we want. But you'll notice that the vocals sit just below the red.
I die just to be with you.
You can hear the vibrato in there too that we brought in with the Neptune.
I die.
Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and we've created these nice tonal qualities with the EQ. So now let's accent those tones with an echo. So right click on the M-Class equalizer or M-Class maximizer and Creative Effects, the echo. And we're going to put this echo in trigger mode. So first things first, put that to trigger, and that means it will only come on when you click the trigger button. Next, let's go ahead and adjust the time to a quarter note and click the keep pitch button. And we do that because if we want to modulate this time knob later on, it will not put these weird squelches in the echoes. We'll leave the feedback at about 30% or so, 28%. And now we can start messing with that. So from here on out, what we're doing is we're actually shaping just the echo portion of the file. This isn't going to do anything to the dry signal. It's going to be all to the delayed signal. So let's adjust our dry wet to about 20% or so. And then let's go back to the feedback section now. So with the diffusion, I like to think of that as kind of like a chorus. I think it adds a little bit of width to the echo. So I'm going to boost it all the way to 100, and let's have a listen and just see what that sounds like. Remember, you have to hit trigger.
I die just to...
So you can see how it kind of sits out a little bit. I might actually scale it back here to about 70%, and we'll bring the amount to about 70% as well. Next, we're going to go to the filter section, and the filter on the echo is a band pass filter. And a band pass filter, again, is just kind of, I think of like if you have a wall of sound, you punch a hole through that wall, and that hole would sit in a certain frequency range, and that's what your band pass filter is. So the sound's going to only pass through that area that you have the hole, and your resonance corresponds to the size of that hole. So what we're going to do is now we're going to bring that frequency up. So we boosted, this is that part I was talking about where we had the notch we're going to put in. So we boosted at the 1.2 kilohertz range. Now we're going to notch out right next to that because that's where our vocal echo is going to sit. So let's turn the parametric 2 on. Let's go over to about that 2 kilohertz range. 2.3 is fine for now. And bring the gain down and narrow the Q. And then we'll bring this over a little bit more. It doesn't need to be that deep, but we'll lower it by about 10 decibels. A little bit more, maybe about 13 decibels. So now we've got this little notch here, and we're going to have our filter, the echo, sit right in there because it's a bandpass filter like I explained a second ago. So we can look at our frequency here. It's at about 1.9. So let's go ahead and bring this to about that area. So about 2 hertz is great, or kilohertz is great. And the resonance can stay about right there. And let's turn the filter on. And let's have a listen now to what those echoes sound like.
I die just to be with.
So you can hear how they sit just opposite of the vocals, which now we've given everything room to breathe inside the frequency spectrum. Last, for the color section, I'm going to put a distortion for that color, and that's just going to even put a little bit more high end on those echoes.
I die.
Awesome. So last, let's adjust the ducking. And what the ducking is it's going to allow the dry vocal to play, and then the affected vocal will kind of rush in or duck under that and come in. So it's more of a smoother transition, and the vocal echoes won't be as harsh. So here we go.
I die. Just a beat.
So you can hear how they come in just a little bit smoother. So at this point, we've got all of our vocals nice and chiseled out with the EQ and accented with the echo. Let's go ahead and add a little bit of reverb to things. So if we right click on the 6x2 mixer and do a studio effect and an RV7000 advanced reverb, and I like to put these above my mixer, so my auxiliary effects are above my mixer, my kind of effects chain is below the mixer. It's just a nice way to kind of keep track of things. If we tab around to the back, you'll notice that it automatically routes from the auxiliary sender returns of the mixer to the RV7000. A nice shortcut, if you hit K on your keyboard, it will show just the cables that are attached. So if I go to the RV7000 and hit K, you'll see you see just those. And that's a nice way to kind of see when you get a really messy effects chain going on. Okay, so back to the RV7000. Let's right click on the remote programmer, and we're going to go ahead and put this reverb in now. And what we're going to do is we're going to make it kind of roomy. So my algorithm is going to be room, and it's a little long right now. So what we're going to do is adjust the size of that room down a little bit to about half a second or so. And we'll leave the diffusion as is. The diffusion will make this, you can see how it makes it spiky. It just makes the reverb more spiky, and we want to make it kind of smooth, so we'll leave it at full value of 127. We'll leave the room shape alone as well, and we're not going to worry about this over here. This would delay the reverb and send it shifted over, and we don't want to do that. So at this point, we could go ahead and mix our reverb in with the auxiliary knob here. So let's go ahead and do that.
I die just to be with you. I die.
And what we want with the reverb is we want, again, to be subtle. And what it's going to do is just kind of melt things a little bit. But in this case, it's going to put a little bit more airiness to the vocals. And that'll sit in nicer because we've got things notched out so nicely. So let's click the S button on the sequencer track so we can unsolo everything. And let's listen to the everything now.
I die just to be with you.
And here's without all the effects.
I die. Know how I feel. I die just to be with you.
So you can hear how things are much smoother. So at this point, we're ready for automations on certain things, and the harmonies as well. So we filtered out all this. We filtered and EQ'd in the high end of the vocals, and we're going to round out the low end with our harmonies. So if we right click on the Neptune, we're going to create a track for Neptune 1. And let's go ahead and name the Neptune now, the Vox Neptune, just so it's nice and easy to find inside our sequencer. And at this point, let's expand the Neptune, and we're going to adjust one more thing. And what we're going to adjust is the MIDI destination. We're going to change that to voice synth, and so now our stuff that we draw in on the sequencer track will be a harmony versus a pitch-corrected version. So I'm not going to spend time drawing in the notes. I'm just going to copy these down. The reason is that it's not very much fun to watch me draw in notes. But let's look at the harmonies real quick. If we look at these, notice that there's basically two voices for all parts except for right here. The third voice is my actual vocal. You'll notice that everything is extremely clean. There's no overlap in the notes. They end with the next one beginning. There's also some gaps here and there, and if you put the gaps on S's and things like that, it also helps to not, you don't need a harmony on a sibilance. You only need it on the actual like sustains and things like that. So now let's listen with our harmonies. We'll solo the vocal track, and we have this independent control because we wired this earlier. So let's listen now.
I die.
Oops, we need to solo our Neptune as well. Here we go.
I die Just to be with you, I die. Know how I feel.
So you can see how those vocals sound really good with those harmonies, and they sound a little out of place right now, but if we go ahead and bring the music in, and now we can really hear it.
I die just to be with you. I die. Know how I feel.
So much better. So now that we've got that in place, the last thing we're going to do is put the automations for the trigger on the echo. So let's name the echo the Vox Echo. And again, right click on the echo and create a track for the Vox Echo. And you'll see that it shows up right down here. So let's expand the echo. Right click on the trigger button and click Edit Automation. And now we have an automation track. You can see that it is the automation track. How that puts a little line right there in the middle, or well, in the middle when it's in a smaller view. You can see that right there. So now we'll go ahead and draw in our automation track, and we'll just do one word at a time. So back to our cursor tool, double click on that. We'll expand this out a little bit. And what we're going to do is just draw in our automation. So I want it to accent the I in this word die here. And that's what I want. So if we listen to it, we can adjust it from there. Great. So I'm going to turn the dry wet up just a little bit to get a little bit more of that. Perfect. So at that point, instead of going through and doing that all over the place, let's just clean this up, make it look a little nicer. And then hold down Alt, I believe it would be Control on a PC. And we're going to go ahead and just put these on the other ones. And so we've built in these automations, and let's have an overall listen, and then we're finished.
I die just to be with you. I die. Know how I feel. I die just to be with you. I die. Know how I feel.
And there you have it. We have put compression, auto-tune, EQ. We've compressed a little bit more. Then we accented all those tonal qualities with the echo. Put a little bit of reverb on top of that to melt everything together. And then we added in our harmonies with the Neptune, which really makes things sound amazing. And then on top of all that, we added the automations in last. And that's how we can adjust vocals inside of Reason. So I hope the interactive tutorials, you enjoyed those, because we're going to do a lot more like that to get you guys involved with things that I do. So I'll be putting more files into that Dropbox and putting the links in future videos. Don't forget to rate and subscribe, and I hope you enjoyed it.